Yeah, if you don't have your horns up, I don't know what the heck is wrong with you. It's game day. We're about 2 hours away from kickoff between Texas and Georgia. A little battle between the hedges tonight between the 10th-ranked Longhorns and the 5th-ranked Bulldogs. I'm Jeff Howe. He's Jerry Hamilton. This is the On Texas Football Tailgate Show. CJ Vogel will join us here shortly. I want to thank our game day sponsors here, sponsoring our coverage here on Texas Football. That is Flight by Yingling, Tito's Handmade Vodka, and Von Lane. And Jerry, let's go ahead and thank our title sponsor right now for the Tailgate Show. That's our friends over at Hargrove Roofing.
Yeah, thank you very much to our friends at Hargrove Roofing with offices across Texas, including Austin, as well as Louisiana and Arkansas, and they're expanding, by the way. This is a growing company. Hargrove Roofing will take care of all your roofing needs. Plus, they are Longhorn friendly. They are not a Texas State Trooper over there in College Station with partners like former defensive tackle Stevie Lee. They're the most Bart Orange roofing company out there. No one wants to turn their home over to a company they can't trust. So call Hargrove today for a free, no strings attached roof inspection. Just call 512-645-3202. Hargrove Roofing. Know who's on your roof.
Jerry, look, before we get into Texas and Georgia, while we give everybody a chance to join in, and thanks everybody for hanging out in the chat. Jerry, your take on everything that's going on in the SEC today, that wild game in College Station. Oklahoma's up on Alabama at halftime. Just your typical Saturday in the SEC.
Well, ski break, I lipped out a 4-footer for 68, so I had to settle for 69. Played pretty well in the back nine of Augusta National this morning, but it was a decent round. I hit the ball pretty well. All right, on the SEC, I mean, look, there's two sides to the South Carolina A&M game, other than the State Trooper, which that was the bad side of anything today. Yeah. But look, A&M obviously was looking past South Carolina. They were 9-0. They'd been through their schedule. South Carolina came to play. Lenore Sellers is really good if you actually give the guy some time. Other than the last play of the game, you got to get the ball out of your hand, dude. Look, A&M's got a little mojo this year to them. South Carolina's not a good team, but I said in the text, for the last 27 years, A&M would have lost that game today. Dating back to the late 90s. They would have lost that game today. They're finding a way to win some things this year. They got some mojo. Best season since 1939 I'm not picking them to win a national championship. Don't get me wrong, but they're having some injuries creep up. Bethel Roman, the freshman receiver, got hurt. Reuben Owens went down in that game. I don't know his status. They're starting to have a little offensive injuries creep up there. But this sounds crazy, and I know people don't want to hear this, but I think Texas needs A&M to be 11-0. Needed them to be 11-0 when they come to Austin. That win needs to mean a lot. A&M's in the playoffs anyways. They're not losing to Samford. So that Texas, it's better if A&M's 11-0 when they come to Austin and Texas beats an 11-0 A&M team. That's a good thing for Texas. So that game was wild. But A&M's got some of that positive mojo this year, and they're winning games that I think ordinarily they like that when they would have lost. So even though the schedule hasn't been tough, everybody said the same thing about Texas last year. Notre Dame looked really good. Jeremiah Love's really good. CJ Carr's coming along. That's not SEC, but that's one of the big games. That was the other big game early. I was up on USC. Michigan escaped with a field goal win over Northwestern, who Northwestern's been in a lot of those games this year. But the Oklahoma, Alabama right now, look, Ty Simpson has they have a couple of turnovers in the first half of this game. Ryan Williams and a pick, I believe that is. Alabama's totally controlling this game outside the scoreboard, but scoreboard matters. I still expect Alabama to win this game. I mean, what is it, 280 yards to about 110 at halftime right now, 274 to 110 in that area code. So I expect Alabama to win this football game, but a spirited fight by Oklahoma as they put up this year. That win on the road at Tennessee was big for them. But I'll be a little surprised if Alabama doesn't win this football game.
Well, Jerry, this is what Texas has thought about all offseason. I'm sure everybody in the chat has thought about this. I've thought about this. I know we as a staff have talked about it. Texas and Georgia, round 3, the third time in 392 days that these two teams will square off. Jerry, for you, what's different? There's a lot different about these two teams than the last time they met in Atlanta for the SEC title last December. For you, what's the biggest difference between either of these teams as you look ahead to this game tonight?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, and I'm not saying I'm right, the biggest thing for me is last year Georgia had guys that absolutely dominated this game on defense. Jalen Walker and Mykel Williams. And Mykel Williams wasn't always a productive player, But, man, he was against Texas, right? And he was in some big games his last year in Athens before going pro. And Jalen Walker's a great football player. And Malachi Starks was arguably a top 2 safety in American All-American. So without Jalen Walker, without Michael Williams, and they have really good linebackers. They got like 6 guys who are going to play in the NFL. C.J. Allen's a really good player. Their other guys are really good. They don't have a Jalen Walker, though, that was so scheme versatile. It was like coach on the field plus pass rusher, calls your defense, all of it. And Michael Williams was very disruptive. And then they lost Brooks Austin mentioned it. We talked about in the offseason, Tyree Mingham Dawkins going pro. They didn't expect that one. That hurt them. Then Damon Wilson transferred out to Missouri. So they lost some of those 5-tech edge rush guys that they were planning on having this year. So they're not quite as deep on defense as they have been on the defensive line. And while they have really good linebackers, I love all those guys as prospects and players, they don't have a Jalen Walker. And then KJ Bolden's a really good player, but he's not Malachi Starks. So Georgia's not as good as they have been on defense. And it's going to be hard to be as good as they were in the 2020, 21, 22 range because of the portal. And it's just tougher to keep your depth nowadays. So that's the biggest difference to me is Georgia last year against a Kelvin Banks, against a Cam Williams, against a more experienced offensive line, a Hayden Connor and a Jake Majors, absolutely destroyed Texas with 13 sacks in 2 games. I don't think we'll see that from Georgia unless we have a bunch of miscommunication on the offensive front and just blown assignments. On the Texas side, I think the biggest difference for me is the secondary and communication. I mean, that was arguably the strength of the Texas team last year, was the communication in the secondary and how that thing tied together with the addition of Makuba, the move to Barron to corner, Michael Taff. You had Jelani McDonald's supporting role, and then obviously Manny Muhammad at your other corner. They've taken a step back at corner this year, and I'm not sure it was going to be as good a communication. Just looked like a kind of a defensive half-court basketball symphony at the back end of your defense. So I went to the defense on both because, look, they both have good defenses, but neither defense as good as they were last year. And I think anybody would agree with that. So the question I have tonight about this game, and it comes down – this is going to be first about physicality and Kirby. He's going to try to bring it to the most physical game his team's played this year and see if Texas will match it, number one. But once you get beyond that, we've talked about Georgia linebackers. We talked about Texas offensive line, all these quarterbacks and everything we've talked about. Whose wideouts are going to make big play against the secondaries who aren't as good as they were a year ago for these teams? I think wide receivers have a chance to have some big plays tonight in this game. And which wide receiver core is it going to be? Because neither one of these secondaries is as good as they were a year ago.
Jerry, I want to get to that here in just a minute. We got a super chat to get to here in just a second. Also, plenty of stuff to talk about with Texas and Georgia. But before we do that, I want to thank one of our fine sponsors for our game day coverage here at On Texas Football. That's our friends over at Tito's Handmade Vodka. Tito's Handmade Vodka is a proud sponsor of the Texas Longhorns, distilled and bottled by 5th Generation Incorporated, Austin, Texas. 40% alcohol by volume. Savor responsibly. And again, big thank you to Tito's for helping sponsor our game day coverage here at On Texas Football. Jerry, you mentioned the receivers. I do want to touch on that. Justin Yarbrough. Justin's got a super chat, and thank you, Justin, for the super chat. He said, LFG, fellas, hope we see the nasty side of the guys today and win the physicality battle. Jerry, you mentioned wide receivers, and I want to get to that because Rod Baver's on Football Theory this week, and Rod and I recorded Football Theory. He made a really good point. If you're Texas, I don't know how much time you want to waste establishing the run, knowing you're going to face one of the best run defenses in the SEC, and you're not exactly a nasty downhill physical offense to begin with. The passing game is probably going to open up the run for Texas tonight, and that, to me, is the big change with Georgia, other than the defensive personnel you mentioned, was Zachariah Branch going to get Noah Thomas out of the portal. Gunnar Stockton's got at least more consistent weapons around him than Carson Beck had last year. And unlike Carson Beck last year, Gunnar Stockton does a really good job taking care of the football. But, Jerry, to your point, you go back and even in the Mississippi State game, we saw Tennessee do this to Georgia earlier this year. Ole Miss did it to Georgia. Mississippi State started to, but things got away from them, and that's the most complete game Georgia's played. But, Jerry, what I'm talking about is the double moves. There are ways you can beat Georgia down the field. There was one play early in that game where Anthony Evans beat KJ Bolden on a double move, and he made a heads-up play to basically bear hug him, because if he didn't, it probably would have been an 80-yard touchdown. But, Jerry, if the offensive line doesn't have to be perfect tonight, but if they can give Arch enough time, there are portions of the field where Texas can have success against Georgia.
No, 100%. Look, the biggest thing for me with Georgia is, and you know what's coming in this game. Like, there's no secret. It's going to be double A-gap barrel blitzes with the linebackers or tandem linebacker blitzes on the same A-gap, okay? If Texas can handle the linebackers in the A-gap in this game, and then Q Johnson, number 33 off the edge, is really coming on for them. Yeah. I can never remember his first name for whatever reason, but
Davies Johnson,
yeah, he looks good in pads, and now he's starting to become a player. If they can handle the A-gaps tonight, the guards can handle the blitzes in the A-gaps, I do think Texas will have time, and I do think Texas has matchups they can win, because the one thing, the Texas offense has been through the ringer. Sark's been through the ringer as a play caller this year. But the one thing Sark is really, really good at is exploiting mismatches. And I think that, look, Lane Kiffin not that you need Lane Kiffin's help. I've said this before, but the fact that Ole Miss has already played them, and you see on tape some ways Lane Kiffin attacked Georgia with success, I don't think that should be underestimated, because I do think Lane Kiffin is a tremendous in-game play caller and adjuster. Yeah. Last year, Georgia played Ole Miss 2 weeks after they played Texas. This year, do you have that Ole Miss tape on how they attacked Georgia and did it to success? 5 touchdowns and 5 possessions. Texas ain't going to do that today. But that was like offensive master class by Lane Kiffin in that game. So there's a lot of things, and Texas has the off week, and Georgia did not. There's a lot of things that point to, all right, if you handle the Georgia linebackers, especially when they get blitzes, you're going to have chance to make plays, as long as you are hard-headed with two-yard runs to not let them tee off on you and get you in a lot of third and longs.
Yeah, no doubt. And, this is a game, Jerry, where a lot of stuff like, open field tackling by the secondary. Missed tackles have been a big problem with Texas in the last few games. That's going to be huge. Speaking of war between the hedges, let's go live to Athens right now. CJ Vogel's with us down on field level. CJ, how's the vibes between the hedges? That hedge right next to you, by the way.
See it right here. I'm about to jump into it. That's
jump
how
in.
excited I am. But no, it's really starting to fill up. I mean, the gates just opened on the other side, so just starting to pile in. It's getting really loud in here now. A lot of orange around Athens as well.
It's a hell of a sunset, by the way.
CJ, give us a couple things you're looking for in this game tonight.
Well, y'all mentioned it just now. You got to get guys on the ground, right? Zachariah Branch cannot be a guy that gets the ball 2 yards downfield and goes for 20, 30, 40. Texas has to rally. They got to be quick, and they got to get pressure on the quarterback.
Hey, CJ, walking around, seeing Texas fans, bus getting here for the game. What's kind of like the vibe for Texas fans? What's the confidence level? I always wonder what the confidence level of the fan base is. What are people you're talking to, people you've seen?
Yeah, I would say Texas fans are cautiously optimistic, right? They're hopeful. And that's, I guess, what the best case could be coming in, knowing how difficult it is to win between the hedges here. Oddly enough, I've been walking around campus a little bit. A lot of Georgia fans have stopped me and told me, hey, we don't like this game. We don't like where this game's on the schedule. We don't like the idea of Texas coming in as a 7-point favorite to begin, and now close to around 3.5 or 4. They said this is not a game that's being enjoyed in the build-up, much like how Texas fans are cautiously optimistic.
CJ, you will be happy to know, though, that John Mateer just led Oklahoma on a scoring drive, so it's 20-14 Oklahoma in Tuscaloosa right now. So just wanted to pass that along to you.
Yeah, CJ, this game, what if you're sitting there? What's the first couple of signs from inside the stadium where you're going to be from what you're going to see? What are the first couple of signs when this ball is kicked? It could be in the first quarter, be the first couple of drives that say, all right, I like Texas' chances tonight. They're here for the fight, because you knew early on in Gainesville, Texas wasn't there for the fight.
Yeah, for me, it's that first third and long defensively for Texas. If they're able to convert that and get off the field and allow that offense to get working, that's great, right? If Texas is in third and medium, third and long, and Georgia's able to convert a drive in which it probably should have been stopped, that's when I'm going to start to get a little uneasy for the Longhorns, much like it was in Gainesville. That's an 8-minute drive to begin the game. Texas got smacked in the face. That cannot be the case on the road against a really explosive offense.
CJ, enjoy the game, and hopefully when we meet afterwards for quick reacts and grades, we're talking about a Longhorn victory. All right, there he goes. Literally between the hedges, Jerry. CJ Vogel joining us from Athens. We'll get back to Texas, Georgia here in just a second, but right now, let's talk about IP Vanish. Nothing kills game day like a blackout or a blocked live stream. IP Vanish VPN keeps your connection private so you can bypass restrictions and watch securely, even on public Wi-Fi. And there's more with IP Vanish Advanced. You get a secure browser that blocks trackers, malware, and viruses. Plus, you get 1 terabyte of cloud storage to back up your files. That means your streaming stays private, your browsing is protected, and your files are always safe. Right now, On Texas Football listeners can save 83%. It's just a little over $2 a month for all-in-one protection. Go to ipvanish.com/On Texas Football. That's ipvanish.com /On Texas Football, or follow the link in the description of this episode to learn more about IP Vanish. Jerry, anything you want to add on to what CJ said? We were talking about, tackling in space, getting guys on the ground. That's one thing I've been concerned with. Of all the stuff we've seen in the Texas secondary the last couple of weeks, I think that's the thing that's concerning me the most, and not just the missed tackles. It's guys are just taking bad angles to the football, typically stuff we haven't seen from this Texas defense the last few years.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. And that's why I say neither defense is as good as they were last year. And that's not – I don't mean that. I just mean that as what my opinion is, what I've watched. Yeah. And tackling in space is huge because Zachariah Branch, he can turn what would have been a 15-yard gain last year's 30 in this game. That's the reality. He's not the only guy for them, but he is their main guy. Obviously, and he is their after the catch guy. That everybody's talked about the 3 yards per attempt going his way, and everything's after is all yak with him, yards after the catch with him. The other thing for me, Jeff, is, and I think the Georgia linebackers have been talked about so much because it is the strength of their defense, and they are a bunch of pros out there. But I think the Texas linebackers have to play their best game of the season tonight.
100%.
Because this is the – look, Georgia runs the football about as well as anybody they've played this year, right? That their offensive line's growing up, got healthy. They had a lot of different starting combinations throughout the first 7 games of the year. Now they've been locked in with their the starters they've wanted here the last 2. So they're playing with a lot more confidence. Their young freshmen have grown up on the offensive line, but they can effectively run the football in a downhill manner. So the Texas linebackers not only have to be really good in the run, but then they have to turn around and be effective covering as arguably as good a set of tight ends as Texas has played this year, right? That's the big thing for me. Yep. They got a complete job on their hands tonight. Now, here's the question, Jeff. How much big dime do we see tonight? I think Texas is going to break some tendency, I think, on defense. How much big dime or something similar do we see tonight? Is this a game, honestly, where you see a Jonah Williams play because you need size and physicality, and it needs to be somebody that can also cover. So that's my question. Do you do big defensive front, bigger people on the front? So maybe it's a Hero Canoe playing as much as an Ethan Burt tonight, and then you have Colin Simmons as the edge rusher opposite him, with 2 D tackles to play the run, and then maybe play a big dime behind it to where you can cover the tight ends but also have some physicality. It's a big ask if you throw a Jonah Williams out there. It's a big ask if you throw a Cade Phillips out there for his most snaps ever tonight in Athens. But I think somebody's going to break tendency tonight. I think the Texas defense is going to be forced to break tendency tonight.
There's a couple of things, Jerry, when we talk about breaking tendency. Again, Rod and I talked about this on Football Theory, but part of it, what I'm going to talk about, we mentioned, but your part we didn't, and I'll get to both those here in just a second. But as far as how Texas breaks tendency defensively, we've been seeing them come out early. They even did it a little bit against Mississippi State, too, where they like that big, tight front with Cole Brevard, Hero Canoe, and Alex January all on the field together. Yep. I would imagine we see that tonight. But to your point, and I wonder where Johnny Nansen and PK, where their confidence is with Ty Anthony Smith right now, who did not have his best game against Vanderbilt. We've seen him play much better. Now, how much of that was he was being asked to do some things he isn't normally asked to do, not having Michael Taft or Jelani McDonald on the field. How much did that complicate things? Because Vanderbilt ate Texas alive with the tight ends. And to your point, Jerry, as good as Vanderbilt's tight ends were, Oscar Delp is an NFL guy. Tight end Lawson Lucky was off the injury report last night after getting knocked loopy against Mississippi State. So it looks like he's going to play. So Georgia, they don't have a Brock Bowers, but they've got, again, as solid as deep a tight end room.
And the freshman's a stud. The freshman's going to be a stud player for them.
So, and they like to actually use him in some jump ball situations down the field. But so, yeah, it is one of the better tight end groups Texas will see. So I'm with you. I think you've got to do some stuff in the secondary. Maybe you see Jonah Williams. Maybe you see Xavier Filsaime, Michael Taft, Jelani McDonald. You may see some 3 safety stuff on the field, Jerry. They haven't run a ton of the 3 safety stuff, and they haven't been able to with Michael Taft out. That could be one way they break tendency. I want to get your take on this because Rod and I talked about ways Texas can break tendency on offense. Rod talked about going empty formation. I was thinking maybe 10 personnel. Maybe you just sometimes eliminate the tight end and bring an extra receiver on the field. I want to it's the lesser of 2 evils to me against a Kirby Smart defense. I want to try to spread them out and see if they can make tackles in space. And due to their linebackers, what teams have been doing to your linebackers, Anthony Hill's a great football player, but I'd much rather have him working backwards away from the ball than going towards the line of scrimmage. If I'm Sark, I want to do the same thing with CJ Allen and those Georgia linebackers.
Yeah, for sure. No, there's no doubt about it. And that's where it'll be interesting to see how Sark, because there's 2 things that you have to be hard-headed with, I think, tonight in the run game, is the actual hand the football off run game and the lateral passing, horizontal, I should say, passing game as an extension of the run game, because that makes the Georgia linebackers move towards the boundary. They're going to be hard to block. You have to be hard-headed and take a 2 or 3 yard gain in that, and not expect it to be a big pop play, because it's not. This is not the last 2 weeks. This is a different team, right?
Yeah.
You're playing who's more physical, I think, at the point on the perimeter. But that's the kind of the key for me is it's yes, you have to be hard-headed, just handing the football off and taking 2 yard gains and then setting up what you're talking about. But I think you also have to be hard-headed in the horizontal passing game a little bit to get those Georgia linebackers thinking about a lot of different things. Yeah. You have to be multiple against these linebackers. I really believe in multiple. To me is run game, flip it out, pass game, and then put them in coverage and see if you can get those guys thinking a little bit more and not just playing downhill. And that's a big task Sark has, but he's got to do it tonight.
Sark's cheat codes, Jerry, are paramount in this game. Pre-snap motion, shifts, the orbit motions, targets to motion, bunch formations, all of the stuff that makes his offense special. We've got to see it tonight. Real quick, want to thank one more time one of our fine sponsors here at On Texas Football. That's our friends over at Tito's Handmade Vodka. Tito's Handmade Vodka is a proud sponsor of the Texas Longhorns, distilled and bottled by Fifth Generation Incorporated, Austin, Texas. 40% alcohol by volume. Savor responsibly. And again, thank you to Tito's, Von Lane, and Flight by Yingling for sponsoring our game day coverage here at On Texas Football. Jerry, we'll see if any super chats or anybody's got anything they want to add here in the chat before we sign off. But Jerry, give me one more thing we haven't touched on, something you're really, really looking for tonight.
Yeah, so the Georgia punter has the ability to outkick the coverage.
Mm-hmm.
So does Boomeester. I think you got to watch outkicking your coverage tonight in this game, because you have two punt returners that can hurt you. I think the punters have to be really good with combining distance and hang time and trajectory and angling their punts tonight. I think that's because if this is a close game in the second half, which we all hope it is, because I think the only way this isn't a close game is not what we want to talk about. Assuming this is a close game, there's going to be a point in time probably where a punt returner may have a chance, but it's really up to the punters, because the guy for Georgia's an NFL punter. Boomeester will be in an NFL camp, right? Those guys have the ability to rip that ball right past their coverage and give a return man a chance. That's one thing I'm looking for tonight. Who has control in that situation, the optimal control from a punt standpoint. And then look, Gunnar Stockton's played really good. This is such an interesting quarterback game, because Gunnar Stockton not the player. Everybody's got different strengths, right? He reminds me of Colt McCoy in a lot of ways. That he just wearing that Georgia. His sister's name's Georgia. People have pointed out in the chat all week. Wearing that uniform, winning, losing in that uniform, that means the world to him just to get to play in the Georgia uniform. And he reminds me of Colt in that way. And some people would say Sam Ehlinger. I think there's more Colt to me in that way and just the way he is. But that is big. And then Arch Manning, who always wanted to grow up going to Texas, because there aren't many college games you turn on anymore, Jeff. And you look at both quarterbacks, say they grew up wanting to play for the team they were playing for.
Yeah.
This game is a rare one in college football nowadays. So, look, is Arch Manning ready to become a true star? This game makes stars. If you look at last year, yes, Jalen Walker and yes, Mykel Williams were already projected to be first round or borderline first round pick in Jalen Walker's category. But those guys left no doubt in the Texas-Georgia game that those guys were locks as two superstars. Mykel Williams, who has so much upside, is going to be drafted. Tonight, you need to see Colin Simmons. If at the end of this game, you need to hear Colin Simmons. That guy looks like a future top 5 pick. Anthony Hill looks like a first-round pick. And Arch Manning has arrived in college football, officially arrived. He's had good games the last 2 games, but you don't officially arrive until you do something in a game like this. And Oklahoma didn't really count because that wasn't where Texas was at that point in time. That's not where he was at. He seems to be tracking to that point to where he's getting in that conversation right now. Mm-hmm. You want to be talking about tonight in the post game and us in the fourth quarter of the watch with us that Colin Simmons is one of the best defensive players in college football. Anthony Hill looks like a future first rounder, and Arch Manning's arrived on the national scene as a player, not as a Manning. If you hear those things tonight, I think that's huge. But these 2 quarterbacks, this is a rare game, Jeff. You don't see many games where 2 quarterbacks grew up wanting to play for the team they're actually playing for.
No doubt. Jerry, I'll piggyback on your thoughts here on the other side of this, but I need you to one more time say thank you to our friends over at Hargrove Roofing.
Yeah, thank you very much to our friends at Hargrove Roofing, with offices across Texas, including Austin and expanding, as well as Louisiana and Arkansas. Hargrove Roofing will take care of all your roofing needs, plus they are extremely Longhorn friendly with partners like former defensive tackle Stevie Lee. They're the most pro-burnt orange roofing company out there. No one wants to turn their home over to a company they can't trust. So call Hargrove today for a free, no-strings-attached roof inspection. Just call 512-645-3202. Hargrove Roofing, know who's on your roof, man. And after you make that order and have Hargrove come out, you get to talk ball with Stevie Lee if you're in the Austin area. That's one reason to do it anyways.
That is outstanding. Big thanks to Stevie and big thanks to Hargrove Roofing for being our lead sponsor for the Tailgate Show. Hey, before I forget, before we sign off, do want to remind everybody our game day coverage here at On Texas Football is not done after we wrap this up. Coming up at 6:30, sponsored by Von Lane, is The Watch with Us, hosted by Aaron Hogan. I'll be on there. Jerry will be on there. Rod Babers will be on there. And then immediately following the game, Bobby Burton and Rod Babers will anchor our post-game coverage. That's brought to you by Flight by Yingling. So we're all day. Anytime we got a night kickoff, we're all day here at OnTexasFootball.com and the On Texas Football YouTube channel. So make sure you're hanging out with us here in a couple of hours, actually about an hour and a half for the watch with us. Jerry, I'll piggyback on your thoughts, and I'll give you the last word after this. You mentioned it, and I thought Hooked on Horns mentioned this also. Are Colin Simmons and Anthony Hill the best players on the field? They need to be, because you look at the 2 games Georgia won last year, Jalen Walker, Mykel Williams, Dalen Everett, Trevor Etienne. Georgia's best players came up with their best games of the season in those 2 games. Texas needs that tonight. And for Arch, this could really be a game, Jerry, that elevates him, because I feel like Arch is getting in a position to where all great quarterbacks get to is when you can elevate everybody else around you. We saw Arch do that against Vanderbilt. There's going to be a ton on him to recognize the pressure. You know, Kirby and Glenn Schumann are going to throw the kitchen sink at him, but not just to recognize the pressure, Jerry, when it's time to throw the football. He's also going to have to recognize Georgia does a really good job of keeping quarterbacks in the pocket, not letting the quarterback run game hurt him. Arch has to be selective whenever he pulls the ball down to run, and when he does, he's got to make it count and make sure that, hey, you're not picking a lane to run and then, oh, C.J. Allen's closing it. It really wasn't there. Fair or not, Jerry, there's a lot on Arch Manning tonight, but if he passes the test, we could be talking about him going to the next level here. Not NFL, but as a player.
As a player, yeah, he's going back another year. I'll say this. You know what's interesting about Arch in this game tonight? And I don't know why I haven't brought this up, but I don't know if anybody else has nationally or anything. But, Arch Manning knows Georgia about as well as any quarterback can. He came down to Texas and Georgia. He studied Georgia. He watched Georgia a lot. This is not a guy that's coming in unfamiliar with Kirby Smart, the Georgia defense, what they try to do to people, because the Manning studied all this stuff in recruiting. It wasn't just about who's your quarterback coach and who's going to develop you. They had a full encompassing recruitment. Arch Manning understands what Georgia is trying to do. Now you have to go out and execute it, but this isn't a situation where a John Mateer from Little Elms up at Washington State, and he was never recruited by Georgia, and then he transfers down and back into the SEC. This is a Arch Manning that literally studied the Georgia program for 3 years, him and his father and the whole Manning family. Just remember that one if he does really well tonight. He may have a little understanding more so of what Georgia's doing than some quarterbacks.
Yeah, real quick, last thing before we sign off, was waiting on this to drop. The game day injury report from the conference is out. That Texas injury report, Jerry, it is clean. Nobody on that injury report. So Texas will be as healthy as Longhorns have been all year. And we're a little less than 90 minutes away from the start of Texas and Georgia. Again, the watch with us is going to start at 6:30. Aaron Hogan's going to host that. Jerry and I will be on there at the start. Rod Babers will trickle in. So the whole crew will be involved. Jerry, thank you for the knowledge and expertise as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. Thank you to CJ Vogel for joining us live from Athens, and thank you to Hargrove Roofing for sponsoring it. If you're not a member over at ontexasfootball.com, you can get over the site right now and sign up using the promo code OTFOG, and that'll get you 1 year of access for $39.95. Make sure that you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, whether it's here on the channel or on the site, you're not missing any of our coverage before, during, and after every Texas game this season. For Jerry, for CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, welcome.